Welcome to Closing the Loop podcast episode 5. You can't build collection on a dysregulated nervous system. Thanks for coming back, and if this is the first episode you're listening to, welcome. Today, Heikki and I are heading off to the chiropractor. It's become one of those appointments that I look forward to because it's another opportunity for me to learn. Some of you may know that I have history in treating humans. I used to run a classical and orthopedic massage and pain management clinic in Dublin, Ireland, and looking after the musculoskeletal system is a very important part of any athlete's life, not just humans, but of course horses too. And when we're talking about producing a horse, it's not simply about teaching the movements or improving the performance, although those are important things. It's also about understanding the horse that's standing in front of you. And the more horses I work with, the more I realize just how much they quietly adapt to us. You know, horses have this extraordinary capacity to compensate, like we do too. If we sit in an office all day and don't look after our physiology, we begin to compensate. I don't know about you, but I certainly can feel it. If I'm not out there riding and playing with my horses, my body says, no, you're getting old. But horses, their compensation's a little bit different because they don't wake up in the morning wondering how they can make our lives difficult. Although we can often consciously make the decisions of, I'm just going to stay in the office today because the weather's bad. More often than not, horses, they spend their days trying to make sense of the moment, what we're asking them to do, what's happening in their environment. And even when something in their own body isn't quite as comfortable as it could be, they try to make the most of it. When horses work around us, our, habits, our body tightness, especially to do with riding, they can tighten through one side, maybe brace through another side, become a little bit heavier on one rein and a little bit less willing to step underneath themselves. And these are all the kind of compensatory things that, their environment as well as their natural physiology can produce. And sometimes the changes, they're so subtle that we really barely notice them until someone with fresh eyes points them out. So I don't see taking my horse to a chiropractor or an osteopath or a body worker as looking for problems specifically, although if you have a good body worker that you work with, they don't want to see you more often than they have to see you. I see it as refusing to kind of make assumptions. If there's something that's not exactly right, I want to know what could be underlying. There's such a humility that comes with producing especially young horses well, because the better we become ourselves as the producers, the more aware we are of everything that we don't know. So I could certainly convince myself that, Heikki feels wonderful because he looks happy and he gallops over the gate whenever I go there, and he's working well and we're making lovely progress together, and all of those things are true. But none of those observations are replacing having someone else assess his body with the knowledge and the experience and insight that complements what I do. So I think our horses deserve that. They deserve owners who are more interested in understanding them rather than being right about them. This is my horse and I know everything. That kind of thought has stayed with me this week because I've been reflecting on what we ask our horses as they progress through their training. In the horse world, we spend so much time talking about collection and engagement and impulsion and self-carriage and all of those things that, yes, they are important, when they are appropriate. But I sometimes wonder whether we forget that those words are, they actually have meaning. What are they describing? Because collection shouldn't be something that we do to a horse. It's not something we can manufacture with our hands and create through stronger aids, because genuine collection is something that the horse offers when his own body is physically capable of carrying himself in balance. It's almost like it's an expression of strength and comfort and confidence and trust, almost like the horse is saying, look what I can do, look at this power coming through my body. And then on the other side, if the body is protecting itself, say a tension point or a misaligned vertebra, then true collection is at best very hard and at worst impossible. And we might create the appearance of all of these movements, but we can't force the quality of it. And the more that I work through the How to Talk Horse curriculum, especially modules 1, 2, 3, and 4, their connection, relaxation, responsiveness, and confidence, the more I work through those with Heikki, the more I've realized that they aren't beginner exercises at all, although they are the foundation. And as that foundation for higher training, every conversation we have together is preparing his body and his nervous system for what comes later. Think about it. Connection. Are you connecting with each other as you're playing and working together? Are you both relaxed? Are you responsive? Are you both responding to the other person? Imagine having a conversation with a friend. If the other person is just sitting there scrolling, they're not responsive. They're just not there. They're not connected. They might be relaxed, but they're not there. And of course, confidence. Having the confidence to know what the job is. Having the confidence to learn. Having confidence in you. And building that natural confidence in the horse's nature every step of the way. Because the thing is that every one of these conversations that we have together, they continue to prepare the body for the next stage and to the next. And every time Heikki learns to soften instead of brace, and every time he discovers that he can remain relaxed while trying something new, and every time he gains confidence in an unfamiliar situation, he's building that the physical and emotional foundations that will one day make collection possible for him, that he can collect himself. It's made me realize that this journey toward Brisbane isn't really beginning with dressage movements or cross-country questions. It's really beginning with a young horse learning that the world is a safe place to be curious. And something that struck me this week is that maybe we as human beings aren't actually that different. If you listen to the last episode about being a good learner as we as riders, I look back at myself 15 years ago and I can see someone who's desperately wanting to become a better rider. I wanted higher marks, I wanted bigger competitions and ultimately the Olympics. And I believe that all of those things would come from working harder and learning more and expecting more of myself. And yes, those things are important. And I don't regret that ambition, because ambition isn't the problem. It's what I didn't understand at the time was that I was asking for my own nervous system to carry far more than I knew how to carry. So if you haven't listened to the last episode, I suggest that you go and listen to that one. It goes into this much deeper. But just as a horse begins compensating with his body when they don't feel comfortable, I had become incredibly good at compensating in my own life. I compensated with perfectionism, with overworking, with taking responsibility for everything, and most of all believing that if I simply tried harder or hard enough, whatever that means, then I could overcome everything. And looking back now, I don't think that, well, I know I wasn't building connection. I was building compensation, compensatory patterns. The strange thing about that compensation is that for a while it works, you know? The horse can compensate for quite a long time before the cracks begin to appear. He might shift more weight onto one shoulder and tighten through his back and protect the sore area by overusing another part of his body, or change the way that he moves to avoid discomfort. So for example, Heikki and I are going to the chiropractor today, and I know there's something going on in his thoracic sling. I just can't get to it because he has tension in another part of his body. But because horses are so incredibly generous, they'll often just keep trying. They'll keep answering our questions the best that they can, even when those answers are becoming more difficult for them to give. And eventually, that compensation catches up with them. And sometimes it looks like resistance, or tension, or unevenness, or even changed behavior. You know, I have a wonderful student who has this incredible horse that she has taken on. And when the horse came, he was lethargic. And she's done so much for him that he's now able to be his full self. She's done all the body work. She's made sure that his stomach is okay. She's made sure that this horse can actually be his full self. Come back from those compensatory patterns. Good for her. What a gift for him. Because that compensation catches up and the behavior can change. But it can also change for the better. And if we don't change these compensatory patterns, they can become an injury. You know, very often what we're seeing is simply a horse whose body has just been carrying way more than it can comfortably carry, or try to move in a way that it can no longer move. So as I think about this week, I can't help but wonder how often we do exactly the same thing as humans, you know? I look back and I see that I became exceptionally good at compensating psychologically, always making a reason for something to be in a certain way, or a way to overcome something. And from outside, it probably looks like resilience. People admired my work ethic, my determination, and my pig-headedness to keep going. And I too admired those things in other people because it kept me going. It inspired me to keep going. But there's a difference between resilience and compensation. And I think I understood that only in hindsight. Because compensation asks the body to carry a burden it was never designed to carry indefinitely, while resilience includes the ability to recover, adapt, and return to balance. Whether it's psychological or physiological compensation, it will eventually catch up if we don't return to recovery, adaptation, strength, and balance. And for years, I believed that if I just worked harder, pushed a little further, or expected a little more of myself, like I'm just not good enough, I just need to do more of this or learn more of this, that I believed that I would eventually become the rider that I wanted to be. And I never stopped to ask whether the person carrying the dream actually felt safe enough and strong enough to carry the dream. And now it's different for me. Because back then I was so focused on becoming technically better that I paid so little attention to what was happening underneath the surface. I'd learned how to keep going and how to override the exhaustion and how to ignore discomfort and how to make achievement more important than what it was actually costing me to achieve it. And once, ladies, you hit menopause and you go through it, you just don't have that energy anymore. You just can't keep masking anymore. Back then I thought it was strength because I hadn't yet understood the ability to endure something, and think of it as a capacity to carry something. I thought those were the two things. I thought enduring was the same as having the capacity. They're not the same thing. And the irony, of course, is that the horse notices what's underneath the surface more quickly than we do. We think we know. They don't really care how ambitious we are or how many books we've read or what level we competed or any of these goals that we have set for ourselves. They respond to the person that's standing beside them that day. They respond to what their body's telling them. Is my body soft? Is it relaxed? Or is it braced and tense? Trailer loading is such a great example of this. Linda often says, when people start trailer loading their horses, the horse kind of goes like, I don't know what it is about this trailer, but this trailer going in, but anytime we're here, my person goes insane. It's the same thing. Not relaxed. Are we breathing properly, or are we holding our breath? Another thing, if you're holding your breath, your horse feels scared. Am I present with them, or am I thinking about something else? Horses don't lie. But maybe there's a more accurate way of saying that, and that is that horses don't respond to the stories that we have about ourselves. They only respond to what's happening in our and their nervous system in our interactions. And that has become impossible to ignore while working with Heikki. I know I haven't officially introduced Heikki to the realms yet, but I will continue to refer to him until I do. I want to give him a good party. One of our incredible neighbors and grandfather figures, Alan, passed away not so long ago, and as I was dealing with the grief, I was working through it, and I was not really very present. Heikki, being 4-year-old, turning 5, he doesn't have enough life experience to psychologically compensate for my incapacity to be present. And I was riding him, and I was being pulled underwater by the grief that I was feeling, and Heikki got a fright, and I fell off on gravel road. And that wasn't because he was a bad horse. He was because I wasn't there to help him regulate. I wasn't present. There are these days when I go into a training session with a really clear idea of what I'd like to achieve, and within a few minutes, he's like, I can't do that today. I can't do that today. And he might be a little bit distracted. The environment might catch his attention. Something might be going on. Or perhaps he's telling me that he needs another conversation about relaxation before we can move into, say, responsiveness or confidence or any of those things. And 15 years ago, I think I would have interpreted that fall as not making enough progress, and that there's something wrong with the process. But today it's just information that if I'm going to be there with him, I need to be there with him. And I've realized that producing a young horse, it's a constant exercise in asking, what do we need today? What do the both of us need today? What's the progress we need to make today? Because time is not infinite. And then simultaneously, what does he need today? This timeline, having this kind of a goal, it dictates certain amount of things that need to be learned in any given week. I have uh, 300 weeks for Brisbane. Every week has a theme. But that cannot override if, his incapacity to deal with something today. So I need to ask myself, be clear on my plan, be present with my training, and ask myself, what does this horse need today? This horse that's standing in front of me right now, what do they need more or less? How can I make them more comfortable and capable of carrying the next stage of this development? And that question has changed the way that I think about progress, because once I ask it, my own agenda has to move into the background. It becomes a framework that we build toward, not a rigid plan that dictates what happens today. And that stops being about kind of proving ourselves and that we're progressing quickly enough. It more becomes a creation of the conditions that where progress can happen through play. So maybe that's why we've become so passionate about all the foundations, connection, relaxation, responsiveness, and confidence. And certainly anybody who is working with Linda Pirelli's How to Talk Horse curriculum understands the benefit of the foundation for everything. And they can really sound like kind of early stages training, connection, relaxation, responsiveness, confidence. They can sound like this, this is going to take forever, and I don't have time for that, I need to go jumping. It can sound like a step backward, but it's actually a pathway to advanced work. And in reality, like if we look at competition, and if you talk to any of the top riders, connection, relaxation, responsiveness, and confidence are Olympic exercises. Connection never can be finished because you're working together. Relaxation never can be finished because if you can't be relaxed at work, you won't get good results. Responsiveness is never finished because if you don't have responsiveness, you don't have conversations. And confidence. Think about what we're asking these animals to do. They are prey animals, and we're asking them to be extensions of our predatory goals. And I don't mean predatory in a derogatory way. I mean, we are predators. We have direct line goals. Horses don't have that. And as the physical demands of training increases, those qualities of those foundations, they simply become more important. Most horses break down at a certain level, never make the highest level they can make in performance because the connection is missing. They might, have an injury on the course because you're not having a conversation. They're not relaxed. They're not responsive. They're not confident. They can't do the job. So think about a horse, say, learning a shoulder in. Connections needed. Flying changes. That needs relaxation for it to actually look something other than choppy bunny hopping. Think about a horse galloping around a cross-country course and still, needing the responsiveness and confidence to do it. Like there's no way around it. Higher training doesn't replace the foundation. It really reveals the quality of those foundations. And the further we go, the less room there is for the horse to compensate for things we failed to build properly at the beginning. And we're all guilty of this. No person who's ever gone to the top level or even, the top of their level can say, I've never made any mistakes. We've all done that. We've all failed and then hopefully learned. And I think that's one of the reasons that the body matters so much to me now, We talk endlessly about emotional regulation and nervous system safety and conscious horsemanship, and those are so important, but we can't separate those things from physical experience of living in a body. A horse who's uncomfortable will organize his nervous system around his discomfort. He might become more vigilant and more reactive and less willing to move forward or less able to relax into connection. And if we continue treating those horses who respond that way as training problems without considering the body that's underneath them, then we can risk the horse to become just obedient, and we might kill the curiosity. And that's why today's chiropractic appointment really matters to me. I'm not going there because I'm expecting something to be really, really wrong with him. I know there's stuff, but he's not suffering. I'm going because I want another piece of information about this horse that I'm producing. I want him to be completely loose and free in his body. And if there is a restriction somewhere that I haven't felt or that I can't get to, which I know that there is, I want to know more about it. If he's using one part of his body differently to compensate for another, I want to understand that before I ask him to become stronger, and as a result strengthen the compensation. If everything feels good, then that's valuable information too, and then I need to change some things in myself, because my responsibility isn't to know everything about my horse, but it is to try and find out. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that producing an Olympic horse it's not one extraordinary moment, like it's not the reel, it's not the highlights reel. It's thousands of ordinary decisions where we choose to listen instead of assuming. And whether we choose to stay with the foundation, build it, or rush toward the outcome, we will meet those problems later if we don't deal with them now. Do we notice the small changes in the horse's body, or do we wait until those changes become too large to ignore? And Brisbane 2032 may be the destination sitting in the distance, but the horse who might carry me there is being produced in these really everyday, ordinary moments, including the days when the most important thing that we do is to load the horse in the trailer, teach them to do that confidently, or ask someone else to help me understand his body a little bit better. That feels very different from my first Olympic journey. Very different. 15 years ago, my attention was almost entirely on the destination and the glory of it, and maybe then I was good enough, whatever that means. I wanted to become the rider capable of competing at the Olympics, and somewhere along the way I convinced myself that getting there depended on learning more and achieving more and working harder and being able to carry more, and those are important things. But I didn't understand that I was compensating in my own life in many of the same ways that horses compensate physically. I kept shifting the load. Instead of going into the root cause of the challenges that I was experiencing, I just kept shifting the load. Just move the position of the bag a little bit rather than get stronger. I kept finding another part of myself willing to carry what the rest of me couldn't at the time, and a lot of that was shame. I called it determination because I didn't yet understand the cost of building a dream on top of a nervous system that never really truly felt safe. But this time, it feels different, and it's scary that it's different. The destination still matters to me, and I would be lying if I pretended that it didn't. Brisbane 2032, a very clear, real dream for me, and I'm committed to giving it everything I've got. But I just can't wake up every morning wondering how quickly I can get there. I wake up thinking about the horse standing in front of me today. What he needs from me today. What are the things in this next 300 weeks that need to be covered? And how can we meet some of that today? Sometimes the answer is just another conversation about connection and slowing down long enough for relaxation to become genuine rather than simply the absence of visible resistance. And that's when horses are super learners. Giving them or building enough confidence in their nature, in their learning process, in me as a leader, and in new things. How can we do that in a relaxed way so that we don't push the horse through it? Sometimes it means, take him to the chiropractor. Have that as an outing. Do that as training. Because caring for the body, that's carrying the dream, is part of the dream itself. I find something deeply grounding in that, this seeing that caring for the body is part of the dream. It really reminds me that the Olympic journey isn't being built in the moments everyone can see and the glory of it. It's like right here, right now, the small decisions, the willingness to listen before something becomes a problem, and then in the patience, having the patience to really build the horse whose body and nervous system can carry the increasing demands of higher training without needing to protect itself. I don't want Heikki just to arrive at higher levels capable of performing the movement. I want him to arrive there still curious and confident and comfortable in his body and believing that the question I ask him is fair. Because if I achieve the dream but lose those things along the way, I haven't actually achieved the dream at all. And maybe that's what closing the loop means for me for this week, The first time I chased the Olympic dream, I thought excellence came from being able to carry more pressure, more responsibility, more work, more expectation, and more disappointment. And I became very good at carrying those things, but I never asked whether I was carrying them well. Heikki's teaching me something different. He's teaching me that higher performance isn't created by piling more onto a body that's already compensating. It comes from creating enough balance and strength and regulation and trust in the body, and that it no longer needs to brace against what we're asking of it. That's why I say that you can't build collection on a dysregulated nervous system. Because true collection has never been about holding more tension or becoming better at carrying the pressure. It's about becoming strong enough, balanced enough, and safe enough to carry more without losing yourself in the process. The first time I chased the Olympics, I was trying to build a dream on top of that compensation. And this time, I want to build it on top of something sustainable. I want to produce a horse that trusts his body, trusts me, and still wants to meet me at the gate when training becomes more difficult. I want to become a rider who can carry ambition without being consumed by it, who can listen more before pushing, who can understand that caring for the body, carrying the dream, both Heikki's and my own, is not separate from the journey of Brisbane 2032. It is the journey. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Closing the Loop. And next week I'll let you know what we discovered at Heikki's chiropractic appointment and what that experience brought up for me, because I suspect there'll be something here worth sitting with. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of your horses, and I'll talk to you again soon.